Stepping into the old and dilapidated house, Malcolm sighed.
Well, I'm here, you hooligans,
He said with an unenthusiastic tone.
What's got you down, Cagey?
Malcolm darted around to his side.
Will you stop with that nickname, Charlie? Jesus.
Charlie looked down for a few seconds, then looked back up with a smile.
Alright, smart guy. What's got you down, Malcolm?
Malcolm plopped on the poorly kept couch next to Charlie and then put his hand over his face.
I'm just done with this shit, man. It wasn't what I expected.
I feel ya. Wasn't at all what I expected, neither. Thought I could finally become a popular clown again. But, this is what the grisliest show on Earth turned out to be.
Yeah, definitely grisly, alright. Show, yeah, not so much.
Malcolm let out a soft chuckle. Charlie looked exhausted. He had patches of sweat on his jacket, and his face looked extremely tired.
Yeah. We can't do a whole lot, though, so just keep your hopes up. You're lucky Joseph's in that room right now, so you can at least get that off your chest. You know how he is.
Charlie said with an awkward grin as Malcolm started to get up to get a drink.
So, why is he in the you-know-what room?
Well, I'm not too sure. He just kinda got caught in there. Old Clowncella's seemed pissed.
I'll bet. Joseph ain't been doing his job too well recently. Not enough jobs for us to do. They haven't went out to fetch anything for Clownpus in a while,
He said while digging through the mini fridge they had. Despite this place looking like an utter and complete dump, there were people who lived here. Malcolm sat back on the couch with Charlie, but while they were doing so, they heard a creak from the door adjacent to the den. Charlie and Malcolm stared at each other, signaling they needed to be silent. Malcolm turned on a show he liked, Animaniacs, on their TV.
Can't believe they're still doing reruns of this.
Charlie chuckled.
Yeah, been 6 dang years since they stopped airing new episodes.
As they were talking, Joseph came in.
What are you idiots doing?
He said with a grin.
Just chillin'.
Malcolm said, directing most of his attention to the TV.
Wanna chill out right now since I got a party tomorrow. First birthday job I've had all month.
Still can't believe you're juggling clowning and all this spiel.
Yeah, it's getting difficult. But hey, it's worth it.
I say you're probably going to have to put a bitter end to your clowning career, Malcolm.
Joseph said, getting several things from the cabinet, seemingly to prepare something.
I tell you, Joseph, I may be stuck in this horse shit, but I at least like my career. Reason I became a clown in the first place.
Malcolm said, pointing to himself angrily. Joseph said no response, but looked at Malcolm with a raised eyebrow.
I was under the impression that no one I recruited enjoyed their career.
Joseph said, letting out a soft chuckle. He was making food with the items he had retrieved from the cabinet. Joseph lived in the house to make sure his work was done without interruptions.
Well, speaking of which, I think I'm gonna take my leave. Gotta prepare for something tomorrow, so I suppose I'll be seeing y'all.
Malcolm got up and headed for the door. Malcolm looked at Charlie, nodded, and smiled, then looked at Joseph with a blank look.
If you need me, you got my number, Joseph.
The door creaked closed as Malcolm left, and silence filled the room after. The silence was broke by a muffled yell from the room over.
Well, he needs me now.
Joseph said with unenthusiasm. He sighed, then left the room. Joseph creaked the door to the room and he stepped aside. He brushed off his clothes and the little amount of hair he had and stepped forward with a confident stance. A creature creaked forward from the darkness to reveal its horrid features. Glowing eyes and unorthodox proportions, it crept forward.
So, do you know why I've called you here, my ringmaster?
Well, not exactly sure.
The creature banged its hand on the ground.
I've called you here because you are failing to commit to this base.
The creature's voice echoed through the room seemingly 1,000 times. It echoed as if it were rubbing in the words into Joseph's mind.
I apologize, sir. I really do.
The loud yell echoed throughout the whole building.
If you were sorry, you would have done what you were supposed to. You and I both know what I can do to you. We're far beyond being ignorant to that. Correct, my hearing master.
Joseph shuddered.
Yes, sir.
Joseph bent down like the creature was about to strike, but it stayed stationary.
Now, go do yourself useful and get one of your goons to fetch another lamb. You know he and I are waiting.
Joseph gave a nod and then left the room. He acted like he was strong, but deep down he was horrified. He looked around the house. Utter silence. Charlie must have left due to the yelling. Joseph sat on the stool he had and thought what to do. His thoughts whirled in his head like a fly around the house, buzzing in and out and in and out. Then, it popped into his head. The thought had the floor, and Joseph was ready to listen. He let it speak. Now he knew just what to do. It would be hard to pull off, but it would work. It would have to work.
Well, make a wish, dude.
James's brother said as the room filled with anticipation. James's family was waiting for him to blow out the candles. James didn't know what to wish for besides one single thing. He wished for friends and for those friends to be present at his next birthday party. The cast of his party this time around was rather small. His mom, father, brother, and then a clown. The clown was interesting, different. He seemed like he had some kind of ulterior motive for everything he did, everything he said. He showed up for James's party earlier that day, and James had been intrigued by him ever since. He was a tall man, very tall, taller than anyone else in the room. James had been a bit frightened of him due to his height, but he thought his fear might be irrational.
James, come on, we're waiting.
James's dad echoed through his ears. He had been lost in his train of thought. He immediately blew out the candles. Everyone clapped, even the clown. After everyone got done with the applause, the clown approached him.
Hey, James, was it?
The clown said.
Say, I got a cool-looking balloon animal I can make for you.
He continued.
You want to see it?
James nodded since he was dying to see something entertaining that day. Nothing too interesting had happened all day despite it being such a special occasion. The clown pulled out a balloon and started working it like a cook works a dough. The squeaks and stretches of the balloon screeched through the room as the clown pulled and stretched the balloon into a new shape.
Here you go.
The clown said with his thick accent. James took it from him. It was another clown, this time a smaller one. It looked really detailed for a balloon. James smiled at the clown.
His name's Nibbles.
James said, looking at the balloon clown.
Nibbles, huh? That's a funny name.
He said, bending down to be around James's level. At that moment, James's dad had prepared the cake. Knowing he needed to get the first piece, he left the balloon clown on the chair he was sitting on. Even though he had no friends to show up, he was still enjoying his party. The clown showed him a cool trick. His mom and dad were being nice as per the usual. Even Thomas was being kind to him, which was a rarity. James got so distracted in his thoughts that he didn't even notice his family had left the room. He thought that they left to perhaps prepare something. The clown was staring at him blankly, and the room was oddly silent. Too silent. It was filled with a sense of dread James didn't think he'd feel at a party. The clown quickly got up and looked at James, sporting a wicked grin.
Say, I got a cool surprise out back for you. You want to see it?
James could hear strain in the clown's voice, like he was stressed about something. James didn't know the clown in his life outside of work, so he was probably lost in thought about his own problems. But despite that, James nodded, thinking his parents had planned for him to go out back. As James and the clown approached the back, he didn't see his parents. All he saw was an old-looking black car and a man he didn't recognize in it. James was confused. Sirens were going off in his head. Loud sirens, sirens that could cause full towns to evacuate. James stayed still as a statue.
Malcolm, hop in, quick!
The man in the car yelled at the clown. His name was Malcolm.
I'm coming.
Malcolm said as he grabbed James and quickly fled to the car. He plopped James down in the seat quickly, and soon after, he sped off.
Still fucking can't believe you actually made me do this.
Malcolm said with a grimace.
He was getting angry, okay? It's the kid or it's you.
When James heard the two men argue, he couldn't help but cry.
See? You're making the damn kid cry. He's only fucking 9, Joseph. How are we even gonna cover this?
We'll figure it out!
The man driving yelled out as they were still speeding down a back road. Malcolm stared at James for a longer time than James was comfortable with.
I'm sorry.
James awoke from his sleep. He scanned his surroundings, and upon recognizing them, he frowned upon reaction. This was his reality now. He was constantly stuck in this basement. No interaction with anyone besides a person he resented. He was 11 now. He sighed and sat himself upon the couch Malcolm had provided him. He sat on this couch every morning and awaited the inevitable creak of the basement door. He waited. He listened. And then he heard the creak of the door. A familiar voice waved through the air.
Hey, James. You okay?
Malcolm said, stationing himself at the door. He was waiting for James's response. In the midst of it all, James could hear people talking at the top of the stairs. He hoped they noticed he was down here.
No.
James said. He said this every morning, as it was the only response he could form. He wasn't okay.
Okay then.
There was a long pause between Malcolm speaking again.
I hope you know I'm trying my best to keep you alive, right?
Malcolm said.
I'm aware.
James said, snarling his lips in a way that got his aggression across perfectly. James's mind wandered, not knowing how else to continue. He knew his situation was dire, but it wasn't Malcolm's fault. At least that's what he was told. Malcolm sighed and still focused his attention on James. James remained still, awaiting the moment Malcolm left. He felt a strong sense of relief as soon as he heard the door creak shut. James felt horrible for how he treated Malcolm since he's tried to help him. In fact, ever since his 9th birthday, he was extremely ill-willed towards everyone. His world completely crumbled that day, and it's been falling more and more out of his hands with the things Malcolm had been telling him. James got up and paced around for a while. He looked at the window, and then to the door. James always wanted to escape. He wanted to go find his family. And of course, he completely knew the risk. Was he really willing to take it? What would happen if he failed? While he was dwelling on the thought, a talk James had had with Charlie popped into his head. All he remembered was one sentence.
Mess up once with this crew, and you're done. It's over. I'm sorry, but that's how we're being forced to roll.
The words echoed through James's head. Charlie had been talking about the Great Retriever, their boss of sorts. If he failed, they would surely have to kill him out of compliance. So was he really willing to take the risk now? Thomas sat in the questioning room. However, it would not be him who was being questioned. Thomas, through whatever trickery and manipulation, somehow convinced the Chrysanthemum Police Department to let him question an inmate. The inmate who murdered his brother. Thomas was nervous. He knew why he wanted to question the man, but he was unsure of where to go after that. All he wanted was some closure. Some type of answer as to why this seemingly normal man killed his brother. Thomas, lost in his train of thought, jumped up at the creak of the room's door.
There he is, Gordon. We agreed to let you question him, but all I ask is to not pull anything funny. I'll be supervising this whole conversation, and do note there are surveillance cameras in this room. Capiche?
Said William Lane, a detective and member of the Chrysanthemum PD.
I got you, Will. I just need to speak with the guy.
Will looked at Thomas and nodded. Will had the man in handcuffs and politely told him to sit down.
So, Malcolm.
Thomas said with a shaky tone in his voice.
Yep, that's me.
Said the man with a grin on his face. Thomas was shaken deeply by that grin. The man had heavily disfigured his appearance since he last saw him. His lips were completely missing, several scars above his eyes and on the corner of his not-to-be-seen lips. The man still had his grease paint on from when they found him, but the hair dye the man had last time Thomas had seen him was not present.
Look, all I want to know is why. Why did you kill my brother? Why did it have to be him?
Well, that's, a bit complicated, Tom. I'll tell you what I told Willie over there.
Malcolm looked at him with a face that Thomas did not expect. A face full of remorse, regret, stress, and drama. But maybe Thomas was just imagining that. Maybe that's what he wanted.
I didn't murder your brother because of what you think. The kid wasn't a bother to me, man. But there's
Malcolm said with a frown. He looked around the room nervously, sweat dripping down his cracked forehead. There was silence in the room. The silence stabbed Malcolm like a knife. It burned.
I can't describe it. There was an outside motive to James' murder.
Thomas looked shocked. This man was more crazy than he originally thought.
What do you mean?
Malcolm looked unsure of what to say. He was lost. Lost in the forest of his own mind, each thought being another tree that only stopped Malcolm from finding his true thoughts.
Well, when I was originally convicted of this, I didn't tell them exactly why, because I didn't want to be put on an insanity trial. I wanted to take full responsibility for this. But now I really don't got a whole lot to lose now, do I?
Malcolm looked up at Thomas. His eyes didn't look so glazed over anymore. He looked as real as he had in a while.
I was forced to kill your brother, Tom. I ain't as evil as you think. There's so many things you need to consider when you're dealing with a guy like me.
Silence in the room again. Malcolm wasn't so scared of it now. He knew why there was silence.
I've been in a group a while, right? And our group is basically like a group of performers turned homicidal killers. Sounds like something from a horror movie, but...
Thomas stared intently at Malcolm.
Look, I'll just tell you straight up. All of us have killed people like your brother because we were fear-mongered into doing it. If you knew what caused the fear, you'd understand. Imagine a supernatural creature that could kill you at any second, and it's telling you to murder people for its own use.
He paused for a moment.
And when he tried to escape, I was told to kill him off. If I had the choice, I would have kept the youngin' alive. I mean, I kept the kid like my own for 2 years before I had to do anything.
Thomas was lost. Will looked lost too.
Malcolm, you sound insane, man.
Thomas spoke, breaking the silence from Malcolm's confusing statements.
I know I do, but you have done some research into this whole shebang, correct?
Both Will and Thomas nodded.
Yes, I've done research. Thanks to Will here and the PD, I have a lot of access to audio recordings and footage.
Thomas said this with a proud tone as he was trying his best to figure this all out, and his efforts have paid off.
Then you should have seen a few audio tapes of me and the group I mentioned.
When Malcolm said this, it hit Thomas.
Wait, so that figure you kept mentioning, that Joseph kept mentioning, that whole cycle thing.
Malcolm nodded.
You're damn right. That cycle thing is a force to be reckoned with, Tom. Mostly why I'm staying here, to save my ass from that fool. I'm tired of it.
Thomas figured it out. Figured out what he needed to do. If this were true, it would answer a lot of questions. Why Malcolm seemed so jolly and hurt by what he did. Why Joseph kept spouting about the Great Retriever. All of it made sense.
Look, I still have trouble believing it, but I'll think about it.
Malcolm smiled at Thomas with the lips he didn't have.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Malcolm said before getting up and exiting the room with Will. Thomas sat there in the questioning room for hours after that, trying to understand everything and put the pieces back together. Thomas stepped out of his car, viewing the scene in front of him. Thousands of graves. He stepped forward and read the title of the grave in front of him. James Gordon, 1995 to 2007. Son, brother. Thomas kneeled down and looked at the grave with a look of hope.
We'll get you someday, buddy. We will.
Thomas meant that. His brother will have closure.